This is the Canadian Dairy Darling.
Hey Jacob, do all countries follow the same standards for milk?
Canada follows some of the highest standards in the world. For example, artificial growth hormones are banned. That's the Canadian way.
Tom here about getting fit right. So when his Toyota needs tires, the service experts recommend the right tires for the season and his driving habits. Because they care about getting things right for Tom.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Color and land.
Hey, don't close it!
But the hairs would have to be examined forensic to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they matched. The Pennsylvania State Police Forensics Unit has conducted the lab analysis. The results confirmed what investigators had suspected. The hairs belonged to the same person. And the substance on one of them was determined to be human blood, containing DNA consistent with Joanne's. But to whom did the hairs belong? Tests quickly ruled out the catcher X and several of Joanne's friends who had access to the car. Pennsylvania State Police were baffled. Again, they turned to the FBI for help. The FBI sent a behavioral profiler from Washington, D.C. A profiler can help narrow the search for suspects by detailing the type of person responsible for a crime through that person's behavioral characteristics. Profilers study a variety of crime-related information, including case reports, geography, timing, and the victim's habits. Then they revisit the crime scenes to read the locations of clues to the killer's behavior. Investigators first took the profiler to the place the bodies were found. He would look for anything that might reveal the killer's signature. The area was so far from the abduction site that the profiler was convinced the killer had been here before. The profiler also hypothesized the killer had been male because the attack had been so brutal. The abduction had taken place in broad daylight, which offered another hint. The killer would be someone comfortable being seen in a small town like Atascocca, and someone who perhaps knew the family's habits and the layout of the house. By fleshing out this portrait of the killer, the profiler gave investigators new direction in a frustrating case. The troopers needed a name that fit the profile. To find that name, troopers drove Andy around Heidelberg Township, close to where the bodies were found. They hoped to prompt his memory of someone who knew this rural area. They asked asked if Joanne had ever visited here. Was there a friend or a family member who lived nearby? Andy could think of no one. Disappointed, investigators returned to State Police headquarters. Then, just as Andy was about to leave, he remembered something. He knew someone who knew Heidelberg Township, and also his home in Kettesau. His ex-girlfriend, Pat Rohrer, had once managed a stable in Heidelberg.
And with that, he tells me that he couldn't tell me the exact place, what it was called, because he couldn't remember the name, but he could give me directions on how to get there. So I told him, I said, well, tell me. As he started to tell me the directions of how to get to where Patty Rohrer was boarding the horse and taking care of horses, well, I knew he was taking me right to the area where Joanne and the baby were found.
We used to go together.
Pat Rohrer and Andy had lived together briefly in Pennsylvania. He told investigators he once visited her at the stable. But they'd broken up in 1989, and she had moved back to North Carolina.
Sorry.
Then in the spring of 1991, before Andy met Joanne, Rohrer had visited him unexpectedly after a fight with her most recent boyfriend. Andy was sympathetic. He let Rohrer stay for a few days, though their relationship remained purely a friendship. Then she returned to North Carolina. Not long after that, Andy met Joanne. As he now told state troopers, it was love at first sight. They were married soon after, in the spring of 1993. They agreed they wanted children, and less than a year later, Joanne was pregnant.
Hey, sweetie.
Alex was born in August of 1994.
You think this so adorable? Yeah. You know what I think it's
Now Andy told
you should
investigators about something that had happened 3 days before his wife and son disappeared.
I will.
On December 12th, Joanne answered a phone call. It was Pat Rohrer.
Pat, what do you think she is?
Joanne told Rohrer that Andy was married now and that they had a baby. She told Rohrer not to call again.
Please, don't
Then
call her.
Joanne hung up on her.
This has been a wonderful 24 hours for me, yeah.
The other Hardigans! Don't over it and Google us.
This family that I work for is on the brink of civil war. Right from the beginning.
Like your style.
Sorry.
OMG, y'all. Travelers swear by this one trip. What's up with Mom?
She's been scrolling travel advice for hours. Now she's got influencer brain.
Wonder what this luggage brand sent me? It's luggage. Local fry. Hybrid. Whoa, hashtag paid partner. Stop scrolling. Keep scrolling. Stop scrolling. You gotta use Kayak. They compare hundreds of sites so you always get your trip right. Ugh, Mama's back, fam. Billy.
Kayak. Got that right. Though Andy knew Pat had a temper, he dismissed the idea that she might seek revenge. Then the investigation took an unexpected turn. The second mother and child were found brutally murdered. The pair, who resembled Joanne and Alex, were discovered in a retail store dressing room in nearby Collegeville, Pennsylvania. Investigators now wondered if a serial killer was on the loose, preying on mothers and children in Pennsylvania. While investigating the homicide of Joanne and Alex Katrinak, Pennsylvania State Police responded to another double murder in a retail store just 45 miles away. The The victims were a second young mother and her baby. Police feared a serial killer was on the prowl. They quickly arrested the suspect, the store owner's son. While he confessed to this killing, he had an airtight alibi for the day Joanne and Alex were slain. Now, police turned their attention to Andy Katranak's ex-girlfriend, Pat Rohrer. We got a couple things going down. Rohrer was a long shot, a brunette instead of a blonde, and a woman, though the profiler believed the murderer was male. But she was familiar with both the abduction and murder sites. Then Trooper Joe Kosovar recalled that he'd worked on a case that was strangely similar. He phoned Special Agent Dave Rowe.
Trooper Joe Kosovar recollected that he had investigated a homicide some years earlier where the cause of death was blunt force blows to the head. The assailant was determined to be a woman, while 1, 2, 3, 4 blows by an adult male would produce the same damage that a woman might have to strike 15, 20, 25 blows to accomplish.
Joanne Katranak had sustained 19 blows. But could a woman have killed her and her infant as well? In May of 1995, 6 months after the murders, troopers Bob Egan and Joe Kosovar traveled to North Carolina. The FBI had helped coordinate a meeting with the Lexington County Sheriff's Office. Together, authorities from the 2 states would interview Pat Rohrer at her attorney's office. Rohrer's mother was also there. Rohrer expanded upon her original alibis. On December 15th, the day of the crime, she said she'd visited a local tanning salon. That evening, she'd taken her regular Thursday night dance lesson at the Cowboys Nightlife bar. Rohrer admitted she'd worked at the stable in Heidelberg Township, but said she hadn't been back to Pennsylvania since she visited Andy after the fight with her boyfriend. She also swore she'd never owned a gun. Lieutenant Tony Roberson of the Lexington County Sheriff's Department helped agents and troopers investigate her statements.
The first thing that they wanted to do was discredit her alibi to find out whether they could be corroborated, whether they could be found to be invalid.
Excuse me, ma'am?
Investigators visited the tanning salon Rohrer claimed to have used on the day of the murders. Prosecutor Mike McIntyre remembers this alibi quickly proved false.
The owner of the tanning salon, Mrs. Simerson, said, "Hey, you know what? Something's wrong here because we were closed on that particular day that Pat Rohrer says she was in getting a tan because that's my husband's birthday. And we were over at the shopping mart in some city about 50 miles away, and I remember that, and I have a receipt for you from the shopping mall to show that we were there."
Sir.
At the Cowboys Nightlife bar, the dance instructor knew Rohrer as a regular.
We're investigating a murder up in Pennsylvania, and we understand that
The club's sign-in sheet showed she'd been there the Thursday before December 15th and the Thursday after, but not on the 15th. Investigators secured Rohrer's phone records. They showed she'd used the phone every day December 1994, except from the 12th through the 15th. Despite her alibis, Rohrer could not prove she'd been in North Carolina on the day of the killings. More incriminating still, her police record revealed a history of violence.
She has violent tendencies, has had them in the past. She was charged in a neighboring county, in Forsyth County, of getting into a fight over a man at a bar. And she was arrested that night.
But investigators were still missing one key piece of evidence, the murder weapon. Rohrer continued to deny she'd ever owned a gun. But investigators kept digging. At a North Carolina stable, they found one of her ex-boyfriends, Walter Blaylock. He distinctly remembered Rohrer had bought a handgun for $50 at a yard sale. .22 caliber Jennings, which they had used for target shooting in Rohrer's backyard.
Put your hands on me, girl.
The last time he had seen it was during an intense argument. Now Blaylock told Trooper Egan the gun had a curious flaw.
He went on to describe the handgun as being a junky, piece of junk type of handgun that often after the first time you shot it, it jammed, not allowing you to fire a second shot. Now this fed into the theory why somebody would be shot once and then beaten about the head.
The FBI helped coordinate interstate efforts to secure a probable cause warrant to search Rohrer's North Carolina home for the murder weapon. They arrived with the warrant on July 24th, 1995. Despite a thorough search, they didn't find the gun. But they did find numerous spent .22 caliber shell casings in the backyard. Only when police told Rohrer that they knew she owned a handgun did she admit to it. But she insisted Blaylock had taken it with him when he moved out about a month before the murders.
No, I have not.
Where did you find the gun?
I told you.
The case against Rohrer was growing, but it was built on circumstantial evidence.
It's just because he wanted the gun.
And strangely, the only physical evidence, the hairs from the car on the murder site, didn't seem to fit. The hairs were dirty blonde. Rohrer's hair was brown. Trooper Joe Kosovar wondered if it could have been dyed at the time of the killing. He learned that shortly before the murders, Rohrer had ridden in a rodeo competition and won. Kosovar contacted the event organizers, hoping they'd taken a photo of him. His inquiry paid off. They sent him the photo. As he'd guessed, Rohrer's hair was dirty blonde.
The photograph was given to our crime lab personnel, and they compared the color of the photograph of the hair with the color of the hairs that were found in the vehicle, and decided that they should further investigate those hairs.
Detectives obtained a warrant to collect blood and hair samples from Pat Rohrer. If evidence analysts could match her hair to those from Joanne's car on the murder site, the troopers could make their arrest. But they would need to rely on a test so new that it would take more than a year for the test to be approved. Until then, the prime suspect of the double murder would remain free. After an investigation that had lasted almost a year, detectives had a strong suspect in the double murder of Joanne Katranak and her infant son Alex. With a search warrant, they obtained blood and hair samples from Pat Rohrer, the former girlfriend of Joanne's husband, Anthony. Rohrer was now pregnant with the child of her current boyfriend. Forensic scientists would attempt to match her hair samples with hair found at the crime scenes. Pennsylvania State Police Lab determined Rohrer's hairs were microscopically consistent with the recovered hairs. But investigators needed more proof, a match at the cellular level. They extracted Rohrer's DNA sequence from her blood samples and attempted to compare it with the DNA and hairs from the crime scenes. But there was a problem making a match. Joseph DeZino, Unit Chief at the DNA Analysis Unit 2 at the FBI lab, explains.
When hairs are found at a crime scene, they're normally naturally shed hairs that don't have much tissue upon the root. And if they don't have much tissue upon the root, there's very, very little DNA contained in those hairs. And therefore, our experience has shown us that nuclear DNA analysis will fail.
In this case, only one of the hairs found at the crime scene contained enough skin tissue necessary for nuclear DNA analysis. But there was a great risk. To conduct the test, examiners would have to destroy that sample. If the test was inconclusive, there was no way to repeat the process. They needed a way to test the other hairs that held no skin tissue. A possible solution lay in a new process being pioneered by the FBI lab in Washington, D.C.